Time for coffee with Kilroy, or what I like to call beverage in a book. My beverage? Well, you guessed it, coffee. Yours? Well, that's up to you. Hope it's something nice. Today, the book is Siege of Leningrad, Solitaire World War II Logistics Game, Minden's Classics, Volume 1. This is published by Minden Games, which I think are generally, if not all, Gary Graber is the designer there. I've covered a few of his war game books in the past, Masada and Torpedo Raiders, and I have at least one more in the pipeline. And these predate the current war book game, or book game, war game, whatever you want to call it, craze that's been going on with Worthington and Lambeau and Kirkpatrick and Patterson and others. You know, it's becoming more and more prevalent, these war game books. But Minden was doing them before them. And the difference with Minden Games are that they're not necessarily self-contained. Some of the Minden Games you need to, or the Minden Game books, you need to cut out counters or make copies of some forms, but you have to like pull stuff out of the book or make copies of stuff out of the book to actually play the game. So it has some components outside of the book. They're all contained in the book, but you need to kind of sometimes you need to make your own components. So that's a little bit different thing with the Minden Games than some of the other ones, which are self-contained. You can play the game with what you have in the book, just usually with a die and a pencil or pen or what have you. So let's take a look inside this one. I'm going to get a sip. Hopefully you guys will too. And take a look inside here. This is, as it says, a logistics game. This very much is a logistics game. It deals with the siege of Leningrad, but it's not so much a war game as it is a logistics game. Let's take a look at the back here and kind of go over that. Siege of Leningrad is a simple solitaire simulation covering the historical 900-day siege of Leningrad by the Germans in World War II. Its purpose is to show the logistical dynamics and characteristics of the original siege, allowing one to see events unfold in a realistic manner and thus to understand them better. The Siege of Leningrad game system replicates the siege, with the gamer watching events unfold towards capitulation or steely resolve as the city moves forth towards its destiny. You can see that there. And so it's all contained in this book, but there are some charts that you're probably going to want to copy, and so that you're not necessarily marking up in this book. It makes it kind of awkward to mark in this book because you're kind of looking at different charts and filling out some forms from time to time. You have the table of contents here. Introduction, how to use this book, that's kind of standard. Brief historical background, Siege of Leningrad instructions, game tables, optional rules, designer notes. So, I mean, you've got optional rules start on 18, so basically it's got 17 pages of rules. Well, less than that given instructions. How to construct game components here, that's that element I was telling you about, that a lot of times you have to make something out of what's in the book so you can actually have the components. Index display, status track, game counters, extended example of play, that's kind of nice. Time record chart, pencil mode examples, designer notes for this edition, games available from Minden, and notes and credits. So 58 pages, but you've got some advertisement in there as well. Here's your introduction, how to use these, how to use the Minden books. Here's a historical background. These are always nice, having some context before you play the game. Here's some important dates. And then this is the game proper on page 7. So you got your introduction, you got your components, talking about that. There's an index display on 21 that we need to take a look at. definitions, preparation for play, sequence of play, and then you've got activity phase, result phase, and then we've got a lot of charts here. Then you have weather, social fabric markers, deteriorization, restoration, special results, turn record phase, surrender and victory conditions, option, and then optional rules. So you see here, there's quite a few steps to this, and it's not as warlike. There's a war chart in there, but this is very logistics driven. I mean, you're going to be rolling, you're going to be keeping track of logistics and supplies, you're going to be tracking events that are taking place to you. And when we go to the turn record chart, I mean, you've got to survive the 900 days. Well, that's replicated by this chart that's like, I don't know, 300 turns or something. This can be a long game. Each turn doesn't take very long. There's not a lot of stuff that you're doing. Falls in the line of some of those charty games where you're rolling on a chart, seeing the result, marking it down, and then making some decisions based on that, then roll on the next chart and what have you. Kind of the old B-17 Queen of the Skies model is part of the engine of this. But you have these charts here, and as you see, the charts aren't overly complicated. You're rolling a one die, and the events, the categories depend on what stage you are. You start off at A, but as the situation deteriorates or continues forward, you move down to E. And then there's different charts here, like war and what have you, that tells you what's going on with those different charts. Here, SF stands for take a social fabric marker, and that has an effect in the game. Here's your events table. Here's your supplies delivery table. Again, this is the logistics. The name of the game is Logistics Game. So this is much more of that than the actual battle that's going on. You're basically behind the scenes and trying to move supplies and people to keep the city afloat. Crisis table, surrender rolls, and that's one of the ways you lose this game. You can lose this game at any time with a capitulation, but that's depending on what's going on in the game at that time. Here's your war table, which basically is not as much of a table as just an explanation of how that works. Special table, your weather, and then this talks about the social fabric markers, deteriorization, restoration, special results, and surrender and victory conditions. And basically, you have to survive. If you play all 300 turns, just think about that. Without Leningrad surrendering, the game is over and the Russians, win the game. It does not matter where the different indexes are. If Leningrad survives, you win. So this is a 300-turn game. Think about that. There's optional rules here, not a lot, and then there's designer notes. Here's how to construct the game components. Again, Minden Games tend to be something that they're out of the book a little bit more than some of the other games that we've looked at. Just check out my playlist. I've got all these, I think, in my bookshelf, but I also have them in the war game book section as well. Plain pencil mode. And then here's some of your index displays here. So you're keeping track of food, defense, morale, and health. And there's just several of these. Let's get to, then here is the status track. Just keeping track of weather. There's a little key there as well. As I said, you're going to want to make copies of some of these so you can mark on them outside of the book. It would make it kind of cumbersome to keep paging through some of these pages to go back to it. Here's the counters. There they are. So this is how you make them. You got logistics markers, social fabric, activity markers, and index and track markers. So I mean, but I think the pencil mode is you don't necessarily need the markers. You just mark on stuff without using the markers, or these counters, I should say. And you got a couple pages of those. Then you have extended example of play, which is kind of nice. It kind of walks you through it. In this game, you kind of need that because it's a very charty and bookkeeping type game. This is all bookkeeping. You're just rolling on charts and keeping track of stuff. So this is the extended example play that tells you what you're doing is very helpful. And here's the turn record chart. So this is where, I get a little woozy. So you start on turn 1 with September 1941, and these are all the different turns down to February of 1944, and there's 10 turns there. So there's 300 turns to this game. So just know that going in. And here's a pencil mode example. So this is how you do it without having to use the counters. You're just marking stuff off here. And kind of explanation of that. And then designer notes for this edition. There might have been an earlier edition of this, I think. So this is all contained in one book here. Siege of Leningrad can be a very long game. 300 turns. You might call it a balancing or manipulation game because strategy of play revolves around trying to balance or manipulate the various indexes to your advantage. Without an imagination or knowledge of the actual siege, I grant that it might come across more as a puzzle than a war game simulation. And it certainly involves an awful lot of die rolling. While it would be possible and perhaps interesting enough easier to design a more realistic economic and war game simulation involving all sorts of factors and avoid the more gamey elements, I don't think such a design would make much sense. So anyway, he goes on to kind of explain that. So that's his thought process on why he did this. And I always like different points of view on different battles and aspects. And there's not, the Siege of Leningrad is not it's not overly gamed. It's not like the Bulge or Stalingrad. Or Normandy or Market Garden, or even some of the Pacific battles, especially the naval ones, like Midway or Coral Sea. This isn't, at least to my knowledge, I think I had like one other game maybe around the Leningrad, and it's more operational than it is a siege, dealing with the focus on the siege. So this isn't gamed a lot, at least to my understanding. If there's a lot more games out there, please put them in the comments below. I'd like to take a look at them. So it's always interesting to see, something that a game or simulation is trying to game something that's not gamed a whole lot, but also see a different perspective on this. And so this, he decided to take the logistics point of view, make it solo, and deal with it in a kind of a charty, bookkeeping kind of way. So, but it's interesting. I mean, this has merit as well. Then you have war game books from him. As I said, I've got Torpedo Raiders, Masada. There's another one I have that I'll be getting to, which actually, spoiler alert, the one that I haven't reviewed yet or done on this little coffee with Kilroy, coffee break right there, is probably my favorite of his designs, just because of its simplicity and playability, and works. You can play it multiplayer, but it works great solo. I mean, it really is almost designed solo. And but I'll get to that one. We'll just leave that as a teaser out there so that you keep coming back for more. But that's probably one of my favorite ones of his so far. And I've got these 3 books that I've shown you so far, and then I've got at least 1 or 2 other of his games that were like ziplocked. One's dealing with the Psalm. I think it's this one, and I think they've actually reduced this one to a book now, if that's the same one that I have. But I'm pretty sure I have one that deals with the Psalm, at least one, if not another one. And the one that, there's your guess which one I'm going to be covering next. The one that I like is on, my favorite of his is on this page here. And I'll leave it there for you guys to let me know. Hey, put it in the comments, and maybe win a prize. I don't know what kind of prize I'll have out there. And then you've got an extra set of the tables here, so you're not paging all the way to the back of the book or the middle of the book on some of these. Here's your main tables again, or at least the main result. And I mean, you're really on this table a whole lot, and it doesn't look like a lot there. So again, the game's not overly complex. It's just quite a lot of keeping track of stuff on charts. And then you got some notes, and there you have it. So that is Siege of Leningrad, solitaire World War II logistics game. Need to get a cup of coffee for that. And love to know your thoughts on this. Have any of you played this? Your thoughts on that? Love it, hate it? Are any of you interested in this? Why not? Love to hear your thoughts on this. Love to hear your thoughts on the comparison between like the Minden ones versus some of the other ones that are out there now. And I'm going to do, there's at least 3 or 4 more books on my list. I just found another one the other day. Go figure. So there might be 5, but there's at least 3 or 4 more war game books out there that are somewhat focused on solo play as well, that I'd like to cover before I do kind of a big exploration of all of them. I was just going to do a 50,000 foot view of this space, all the different war game books, really focusing mostly on the solo play. I'm going to do that at some point, and I keep meaning to do it, but I keep finding new books, and I'd like to at least do these one-offs before I get to that big exploration, so that, we all have the context. Once I do all these individually, you'll at least know what I'm talking about on an individual set basis. Then when I do the exploration, it might make better sense of looking at it from a total view of what's going on in this space. But anyway, love to hear your thoughts, love to hear your comments. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I can't say enough about that. I do appreciate it, because I know your time is precious. I know my time is precious. I've really been pulled at all different angles the last couple of weeks, and I'm in the middle of getting pulled in several more over the next upcoming month. Just a lot of stuff, family mostly, but work as well. So, but I do like taking time out to talk about this hobby, to talk about these games, to spend time with you, if you'll listen to me. And the fact that you're here listening to this, I appreciate that, and it really does mean something to me. So anyway, thanks for stopping by, and love to have your thoughts and comments. Just really, really appreciate any of that. Thanks all. Thanks for watching.